Hi, Michael Goldman here from the Gordon Institute of Business Science here in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts about the Mamas and Papas brand case study and my relationship with the protagonist, Nawal Motlaka. The relationship developed a number of years ago through a networking function that I regularly attend as part of my role within the business school. And that's really where I want to start the conversation today, is really around access. And I guess, as many of the manuals around writing case studies suggest, access is one of the most important things. And so it was useful to initially meet Nawal at a networking event and really start the conversation there about her brand, her business, her entrepreneurial activities, and the opportunity to profile those through a case study. So in terms of developing the relationship with Nawal, the first point really is around access. The second point is about the value proposition. And here what I found was really useful is to share with Nawal the opportunity for a case study about the Mamas and Papas brand and the magazine and the rest of her businesses, the opportunity to profile those both in South Africa and internationally, and through that profile herself. And as an entrepreneur, I think she found that opportunity quite appealing, to get her brand on the global stage and to get business students around the world to start thinking a little bit about the business she was trying to build and the challenges she was trying to overcome. I think one of the other value propositions for her was the opportunity to get input from students. And so certainly what we do here at Gibbs at the business school is invite the protagonist into the classroom when we teach cases, and then give the opportunity for the protagonist to share some thoughts with the students and get input on the kind of challenges they're facing. And as Nawal was building her business, I thought she found that a really useful opportunity. The third point I just want to mention around developing the relationship with the protagonist, in this case Nawal Motlaka, is really an issue of communication and trust. And I guess what we found at the business school is to have an ongoing communication via email, via telephone, lots and lots of meetings and cups of coffee, to really build this relationship and to build a level of trust and respect that we would only include in the case the kind of information that would be useful in the classroom, but also that would be useful for Nawal. And here I think one of the key points in the writing of this case was that there was some information that was gathered during the writing of the case, during a lot of the interviews with Nawal, that in the end she felt maybe not best shared in the public domain. And so a part of the final validation phase was to remove that information. And I think that spoke to a level of trust and respect, that we were keen to tell her story and keen to talk about her business, but that she was in some level of control about how much of that information would go into the case and how much of it perhaps would be better suited to the teaching note for faculty to know as opposed to a published case study. I want to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit on the second theme for today's video, really around how to turn Nawal's real life situation into a protagonist in a case study. And I guess the first point there is about managing expectations. And so what I found really useful was early on to have a conversation with Nawal and show her previous case studies around how a real life story can become a little bit different in a case study, and how the objective is not just a public relations article, but more an opportunity to dive deeply into a business, to dive into the motivations, and through that to teach specific content and frameworks and learning objectives. And I think that was a key conversation that we had early on, so that Nawal was able to understand that the kind of information that I was looking for the case perhaps would not be the kind of information that she would put into a public relations kind of press release. The second issue is the issue around learning objectives. And here what I found really useful in writing this case was to establish those learning objectives very early on. To think to myself around what kind of course, what kind of module, what kind of content and framework do I want to teach through this case, and in this case around brand positioning and brand extensions, and build that in early on into my questioning, into the research, and into the kind of information that I was gathering from Nawal and her team. And so that's really the second point. The third one really is around transcribing everything, keeping a record of everything, and then using that to tell the useful story for the case. And so I had many hours of conversation with Nawal. I recorded most of those and I transcribed those. But what I was then able to do was take her story and the way she structured it and restructure it and reorganize it for the purposes of a case study. And I guess that's one of the key challenges for writers of case studies, is to take the stories as people tell them and reorganize them and restructure them so they work best in a classroom, depending obviously on the level of the students you want to teach. The fourth issue, I guess, to end off around writing great case studies with protagonists like this is the issue of the dilemma, the key question, the key challenge that the protagonist is facing. And in this situation, I was able to identify quite early on with Nawal's assistance the key dilemma that she faced in the development of her business. It wasn't the dilemma that she faced at that specific point when I was writing the case. It was a dilemma from a few months before. And so what I was able to do was write the case to a certain point and then have useful information for the teaching note. And so when I published the case study, the teaching note was ready at the same time. So I hope these few thoughts are useful and that they assist you in developing great case studies that I look forward to teaching in my classes. Thanks very much.